You make it part of your identity. When you talk to yourself, for instance, if you want to start a habit of getting up early, you can tell yourself, I'm the kind of person who gets up early and does things early in the morning.
Welcome to Champions Mojo Weekly Podcast, where your hosts Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker share with you what it takes to be a champion. Kelly is a former Division I head swim coach, Olympic trials qualifier, and holds Masters World and National swimming records. And Maria holds world records in endurance cycling and was the overall women's winner of the world's toughest bike race across America. They'll be sharing their personal stories and wisdom, along with interviewing other champions to give you the tools you need for becoming a true champion in your own life. And now, your host, Kelly Pallas.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast, where today we'll be talking about making good and breaking bad habits. We all have habits, whether we recognize them or not. Making your bed in the morning is a good habit. Looking at your cell phone in the middle of a conversation is a bad habit. We're not here to judge others' habits, but we do want to discuss some of the good and bad habits that Maria and I see in our experience, and then we're going to chat about what the research says about what we should do about these habits. So, if you want to play along with us and decide for yourself if you would like to work on your habits, then you'll enjoy this show. Hello, Maria. Are you ready to go after this topic?
Absolutely. Hello, Kelly. Yeah, we know champions have lots of good habits and probably have fewer bad habits. So this is a great topic for helping us all achieve success. You and I have spent lots of time discussing this interesting and I think sometimes confusing topic. It's confusing because there's a difference in making a new good habit and breaking a bad habit, though the line's not always clearly delineated. With that in mind, I like that we've decided to divvy up our discussion where I'm going to talk about the best ways to make a new good habit, and you're going to talk about ways to break a bad habit. So let's get started.
Okay, Maria. So first, I'd like everybody listening to just envision one or more habits that you would like to make or break. One is enough, or maybe one you want to make and one you want to break. Then apply some of these upcoming techniques and see if they feel like winners to you. Since I am covering the bad habits, I want to say up front here that there is a difference between a bad habit and an addiction. If one truly has an addiction, then that is likely going to need more than we're offering here, and we would recommend professional help, which often can start online. There are some great online help services like BetterHelp, Regain, or TalkSpace. So Maria and I have come up with 3 techniques for making or breaking these habits. So let's start with you, Maria, and alternate our ideas. What do people need to do first to make a good habit?
Okay, well, before I talk about how to make a new habit, I want to cover a couple things. First, a reminder that the reason that we need habits is so that actions we want to do become automatic, like brushing our teeth. This takes away decision making, which takes energy out of the mix and makes it easier. Habits are automatic and they take no energy, so you don't have to think every time I'm going to do this. You just do it. Secondly, habits are different from goals. We often start new habits by making goals. So goals have specific endpoints. And they can be great jumping off for creating new habits, but it's a little different. Secondly, for fun, I'd like to list a few of the most popular new habits that people want to form. The first is regular exercise. 2 is eating more healthfully. 3 is journaling. 4 is meditation. 5 is reading more. 6 is saving more. And the 7th, I thought this was a good one and appropriate for our age, is playing more. So if you're trying to make a new habit, and any of these are the ones you want to do, you could start by, and I actually couldn't do it in 3.
Okay.
My list is 5. And
let's go for it.
All right. So the first tip for starting a new habit is to do just one. I think lots of times, especially at the beginning of the year, we can get ambitious and decide we're going to change everything that we don't like about ourselves or do things we don't, we think we've always wanted to do. But the best suggestion from the experts is to take one and to start small, because creating a new habit is tiring. It requires monitoring yourself a lot. And if you start small, then you're more likely to have success. And as we have talked about with our other champions interviews, success builds on success. So the suggestion is, if you want to start exercising, instead of saying, I'm going to go out there and run 5 miles, just say you're going to walk 5 minutes a day. If you want to write, you can just say, I'm going to write 1 paragraph. Or if you want to improve your eating, I'm going to eat 1 serving of vegetables a day. That's something that you can do. It's you can wrap your arms around it and it won't overwhelm you too much. The second thing is that there's lots of disagreement on how long it takes to create a new habit. I'm just going to say that the best science seems to indicate that it's variable, but it's probably going to be at least 2 months. So commit to 2 months to doing whatever this new habit you want. The third thing, and I think this is super important, is to anchor a new habit in something that you already do or something that you see daily. And that's called a cue. And it's probably the most important thing for starting a new habit because we're so easily distracted. So for instance, if you decide that you're going to write a paragraph a day, then the cue might be when you drink your coffee, or even just the visual cue of your cup of hot steaming coffee in the morning. Perhaps letting your dog out to go to the bathroom would be your cue for exercise. The other suggestion is when you brush your teeth at night, maybe that's your cue for writing down everything you ate if you're trying to start journaling about your food. So the cue is really important. It can be visual, and I do this all the time. I keep little cues in my mind for instance, when I pick up my keys to go somewhere, that's my reminder, I got to let the dog out. So cues are just a great way to start new habits. And then the fourth thing, and this is really, really, really important for me, and I'm not sure how it is for other people, but you have to have accountability. And for me, I am accountability works really well with relationships. So if I tell somebody that I'm going to do something, then I feel more compelled to do it than if I just promise myself. Not everybody's motivated that way, but there are other types of accountability. I just was seeing a commercial for a new app called healthywage.com, and it's basically you basically put money down. You want to lose weight, you put money down every month, and then if you lose the weight, you get a bigger payoff back. I also have had success with having a coach, which is just a person that holds you accountable, or accountability group. So I recommend accountability. And Kelly, I'd be really interested to hear, do you have ideas for how to make yourself accountable for a new habit?
I love all of these. Yes. I think communities, there are tons of communities. And I think in our routines, which is a little different than habits, there was even carrotorstick.com is one.
That's right.
But definitely,
I'm kind of curious. I know you're not motivated the same way I am. So I am curious, do you feel like you need accountability when you decide you want to start doing something new?
I think, yes, I absolutely do. I think no matter what. And I think the one thing that I love that is kind of been a tenet throughout athletics is when you have something that you want to achieve, and in this case it's a habit, you tell people that can help you or that are going to be positive and supportive of it, but you do not tell people that are not going to. So I think that's for me, that's kind of the measurement of accountability. Like I'm very fortunate that I have a super positive, optimistic husband. So I can tell him anything that I want to do, and he's just, oh, of course you can do it, honey. You're the best, and 100%.
That's
great. Some people's spouse may not be like that. That some spouses are intimidated by people wanting to achieve things, and they may be glass half empty, and you tell them that you want to make this habit, and then the first time you break it, they say, oh, I knew you couldn't do that. So I think accountability needs to come from a group that is going to support you.
Yeah, I agree. And then I love these ideas of accountability through money. A lot of us are very motivated by cash. So, we do anything to save a little money. So if we're putting money out there on the line. But okay, so I want to finish with the last tip. It's number 5, and it's what I think is sort of, I don't know, important, yes, but also it really tells you when you've changed yourself or you've really incorporated a new habit. And that is, you make it part of your identity. When you talk to yourself, for instance, if you want to start a habit of getting up early, you can tell yourself, I'm the kind of person who gets up early and does things early in the morning. Or if you want to start praying or meditating, you can say to yourself, I'm a spiritual person and I need this kind of time. Or, and this one really, Kelly, you taught me this one. If you want to become an exerciser, tell yourself and have other people remind you that you're an athlete. Athletes exercise.
Yeah.
And so you taught me that. You taught me to call myself an athlete, and that changed the way I perceived myself. So if you want to be a writer, write and then remind yourself that you're a writer and tell other people, I'm a writer. So basically it's decide the type of person you want to be and then prove it to yourself with small wins. Yeah. So that's my 5 tips for creating new habits. And I got my information from lots of books I've read over the years, and those will be in the show notes so that you can figure out, you can read those books yourself. So if you need more information or want to go more in depth.
Yeah, we've talked about this and kind of done our own spin on things. So I love that, we've read a lot of books. When I went to my bookshelf on habits, there's just tons of stuff in there. So
yeah. There's so much good stuff on the internet, and other than accountability groups, there's lots of tips. Yeah. So there's lots of good stuff out there.
Find what resonates. So Maria, do you want to do a quick 5 summary on that? So sure. Do one thing at a time. And start small. Commit to doing it for at least 2 months. Anchor it in something you already do or see. Have a cue. Number 4 is have some accountability. Tell somebody, have some money on the line, something. And then number 5, make it who you are in your language to yourself and in your thoughts. Make it part of your identity. I so resonate with all of those, but it's funny, it ties so into a good habit that I have created, and it's so ingrained now in me that it really has become a habit, and it was so hard to do, and that is meditation. So my creating meditation, I used to think meditation was silly, and I even considered myself not the kind of person that meditated or even would ever be the kind of person that meditated. And now I actually see myself as a meditator, someone that's spiritual, that, really connects to this. So it's definitely a change in who I am. So I love that you become that person.
And even if you're not quite there yet, you can tell yourself that you are that.
Yes.
So, I mean, for a long time, I told myself I was an athlete before I believed it.
Yes, absolutely.
But, so that's the chicken or the egg. Okay, so Kelly, I've talked about how to create new habits. And I know the second part of this is we're going to talk about how to break a habit, which you and I have talked, is that something different? So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's very different. And and this is something that I have dived deep on because I have a bad habit, and I'm just going to be real about it, that I've pulled out all the stops and I've done everything. I've looked for an answer to every way to break this bad habit. And so what I'm finding in all my research with all the books and all the people that are out there talking about it is a lot of the answers of breaking a bad habit are to replace it with a good habit. Well, we've just talked about replacing it with a good habit, but to really drill down on, what are some of these habits that just are not as easy to break? They kind of may border on addiction. Now, yeah, I open the show by saying, if you have a real addiction to something, then that's going to require some extra help. But I think there's a fine line of things that we can be addicted to that we don't need help with. Smoking, addiction to sugar, addiction to caffeine, addiction to alcohol without being an alcoholic. obviously some people are addicted to screens, to cell phones, to the TVs, to games, PlayStation and Xbox. And so I have to question whether my habit that I am having trouble breaking is really an addiction, or whether it is just a bad habit that I eventually can break. And it is related to my skin, which everyone who's listened to the podcast knows that I went through red skin syndrome, which totally ruins your skin for several months to years, depending on how much topical steroids you use. So, started out with the garden variety eczema, was over-prescribed topical steroids. Topical steroids I used for decades. They damaged my skin. Then I went through withdrawal. My skin had to kind of regenerate itself for years. And during that period, one is extremely itchy. I mean, there's an itch, and then there's the itch of red skin syndrome or topical steroid withdrawal. So I had this all over my body because I did something very medieval that a dermatologist recommended called soak and smears, where you're head to toe with eczema. You get in a hot bath, you open your pores, you put topical steroids on you. After your pores are open, you put it on head to toe, which is ridiculous. You're not supposed to use topical steroids in that large of a quantity. So anyway, this is the charity.
This is wrong. The point is, this is wrong.
So wrong.
Do not do that.
Wrong. But occasionally we get into addictions to things, or we whatever. We eat too much sugar. We don't realize it. We use too many topical steroids. So itchy for years. Well, one thing that we know about scratching an itch is it feels good. Oh my gosh. If you've ever even had a mosquito bite and you get to scratch it, it feels good. So my whole body has healed except the original place of my eczema, which is my hands. And my hands are very healed compared to the way that they were. However, in the evenings when we talk about our discipline being lower and feeling like maybe I'm not even attuned to it, I may be, working on the computer, or I may just be relaxing and talking to Mark, all of a sudden I will find myself examining my hands. Like, oh my gosh, my hands look great. They've really healed. Oh wait, they've healed except this one spot. And then I'll start touching that spot, which is now being called a trigger. So these are the things that these are the things we need to do to break the habit. So the first thing that one must do to break the habit is find the trigger. What is triggering whatever it is? So I want to break the bad habit of scratching my hands, and they itch, but I usually am the one that starts them itching, if you can believe that. And it's just like if someone wants to get off sugar, then they're the ones that go into the kitchen after dinner and say, you know what, I'm just going to have one cookie. And then it turns into,
you're telling my story.
Too many cookies. But it's like that with my hands. So I will have the trigger of examining my hands. So I need to, the first step in breaking a bad habit is, what is the trigger for that? If you do drink too much, is it going out with friends? If you have a bad habit of, looking at your phone, this is a really pervasive, widespread bad habit of looking at your screen while you're in bed. If you have that trigger of looking at your phone, we'll put your phone in the other room, which ties in with changing your environment. So probably I'm going to back up and say number one is changing the environment of whatever the bad habit is. So if it's drinking, don't go to bars. If it's eating too much sugar, or eating junk food,
get the sugar out of your house.
Out of any possible thing that's going to be in your environment. Then is the trigger you're bored, so you want to eat? Or is the trigger that I'm bored? Or is the trigger just really being excited that my hands are finally healing, and they are, and then saying, oh, they're all healed except this one spot, and then when I touch that spot, well, guess what, folks? If you have a beautiful perfect skin on your forearm and you start dragging your finger up and down your forearm, that kind of tickles. And for somebody who has a quick trigger on scratching, then that becomes an itch. So to break it, change the environment, know the trigger, have a plan for like maybe somebody that you can be accountable to. This is another thing that we've talked about with making a good habit. Sometimes I'll say to Mark, hey, I'm starting to scratch my hands. Let's go for a walk. Or can you help me? And he's like, oh yeah, honey. Or people sit on their hands when they're scratching their hands, or have something, a plan, and then replace the action. So this is where I think you could do it with some of the other bad habits that I've mentioned. I'm having a little trouble finding what action to replace scratching with, because there is, what I'm wondering why I say, is scratching an addiction? It produces dopamine and, those great feeling chemicals that make you feel good. So am I just addicted to that feeling of the beautiful feeling you get when you're scratching? So if it's not an addiction, if it is an addiction, well, then maybe I need to go deeper into hypnosis or, finding something else that gives me that euphoric feeling. Maybe exercise, which I already do early in the morning. Maybe I need to do something at night, maybe meditation, maybe deep breathing. But replacing the action, I have not found yet for me, replacing an action. And then this is a really important one, and I'm adding this on my own personal thing, is let go of the shame. So when I say, tonight I will not scratch my hands, and then if I do, oh my gosh, I can beat myself up beyond belief. I mean, just like, oh, you're so weak and you couldn't even go one day with your goal of not scratching your hands. And so let go of the shame and just say, it's not easy to break a bad habit, but I can do it. I've overcome other things. Just like, I love the concept of talking with yourself like you would talk to a really good friend. So if a really good friend came to me and said, I'm trying to break this bad habit, and I just, whenever I fail, I just feel like I'm, lower than a whale's belly, then I would just sweetly talk to that friend and say, hey, you can do this. This is something that it's not going to be easy, but you can do. So those are my 5 steps. Change the environment, know the trigger, have a mantra or a plan to help get you through it, replace the action, and then let go of shame.
I really like that last one. I think lots of times, even just talking about it with somebody who loves you, like you said earlier, somebody who is going to be supportive, because shame is usually something we keep to ourselves. And so for me, and I've talked about this in the show before, sugar is it's an ever-present danger for me. And it's so easy to fall into the habit of eating, really bad sugary foods. And it has the same, it releases all the beautiful things in your brain, eating sugar, but it's so temporary and so short term. But my point is, when I've started talking about it with somebody that I knew understood and loved me, it just sort of takes it out of the darkness. So I love that last one, Kelly, because we're all on a road and we're all struggling. And I also would add that trigger is often tiredness. I think a lot of us tend to do our worst behaviors, the ones that we want to get rid of, at night.
Yeah.
So getting good sleep and not being too tired, and being aware that for me, the hours between like 7 and 8:30 when I go to bed are the hardest hours for me to not eat sugar, or to even to be irritable or do anything as I don't want to do. So I think being aware that evening hours or when you're tired are often a trigger.
Yeah, and I'm gonna share our little funny secret that we had from Las Vegas, which I just loved. So, this pattern that I'm in with scratching and feeling itchy and I really believe it's my skin healing, which is another good way to spin it. But that
is a good way to spin it.
You and I, we don't get enough face-to-face time. And when we went to Las Vegas to see the ISL Finals Swimming Championships, we got some really great one-on-one, just, eyeball to eyeball, cup of coffee in hand, and just talk deeply about things. And I told you about this scratching and how, how it was something that I wanted to break. And then that night, that was in the afternoon, and that night was one of my best, least itchy nights. And I told you the next day, Maria, I almost didn't have any itching last night. It was great. It was like one of my best nights. And you said, well, that's because you went to the itch-fessional or the scratch-fessional or whatever. So I really agree with that when you've got that, some bad habits are obvious to everyone. They know them, they're out there. Some are kind of a deep, dark, shameful thing that may not even be as shameful as you think it is, because we're all human. We all have, stuff, junk, bad things that we do to ourselves. And that's what makes it so hard, because, we think we can do it. But I think speaking to someone, it was very helpful. And I can't remember whether you call it an itch-fessional or a scratch-fessional, but just telling you really helped me. So
yeah, and even though it isn't something that I struggle with, I love you, and it was easy to listen and say and be supportive and feel your pain. And everybody should have people like that. And even if you're doing it in secret because you're ashamed, find somebody that you can talk to about it, because I think that's a really great place to start, even if it's somebody online in a counseling session.
Yes. Once you shine the light into that dark spot, then you can make progress. But until somebody knows, then you're not going to make progress. So, well, great, Maria.
Right.
Well, we're trying to make our shows this year a little bit shorter, maybe more in the 30-minute range than the 45-minute range. And I think we've done about as good of a job as we're going to do on habits, how to make the good ones and how to break the bad ones. And
we just need to end with what we're going to do.
Ooh, well, I think mine's pretty clear, that I'm going to really, really make now that I've had my itch-fessional to all of our listeners, boy, I'm going to have to own that one. And I'd love to hear out there, we'd love to hear from you guys what you would like to either make a good habit or break a bad habit. But I am going to really figure this out for me, because it's a quality of life issue, and I've got to break this bad habit. And that's what I'm going to do, and use those 5 steps. How about you?
Great. A counter to my own advice, I have a new habit that I want to begin. And also, I'm always working on my sugar addiction. I really hate using the word addiction, because I've seen people really suffer from true addiction, but my sugar problem, and so that's going to be a continuous thing. And it's been very motivating talking about how to break bad habits with you, Kelly, and hearing again your own struggles. But I know a lot of us out there have sugar problems, and I would just encourage you.
What's your trigger?
Keep after it.
What's your trigger, Maria, for your sugar?
It used to be everything. Like any time I was in a bad mood or frustrated or whatever. But now it really is, my biggest trigger is the end of dinner, the last meal of the day. And just that sense of, I can relax now. This is my time. I don't have anything to work on. And I love something sweet. And what I've learned about me is that it's not just the real sugar, it's things that taste sweet. So even if I'm eating something that I've created for myself that doesn't have carbohydrates in it, but maybe it's got erythritol or monk fruit or something, even that can be a trigger for me. So I really have to work on dialing down my sweet tooth. And that's a lifelong struggle, and I can see where I've improved over the years, and the keto diet has really helped me with that. But the other thing, the new habit that I want to form is just to be, and I think I've been talking about this a lot this year in our podcast, but to be more deliberate about being reflective. So every morning I pray, and then I usually write something, but I'm going to work harder on that aspect of my reflection. I'm going to really listen to the voices in my head and try to counter some of the negative ones in writing. So that's my new habit that I'm going to make.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't do a new habit. I think one that I continually work on is just like you said, journaling. I think journaling is a new habit. It's a regular habit I'd like to get into. I do it, but not frequently. So I'd like to do that. And I just want to wrap up why we're talking about habits is that once they become, second nature to you, they take no energy. They just, every morning you and I, we pop up and we exercise. That is just, there's no decision making. It's just done.
Right.
Like I've always said, I wake up, I drink 2 big 16-ounce glasses of water because it's just a habit. It's a good habit to drink a lot of water throughout the day, and I just do it. I don't even have to think about it. And, I think being grateful is something that is a naturally good habit that, I stop throughout the day and I take moments of gratitude just to buoy myself. And I don't even think, I don't put Post-its up, be grateful, but that's why we're talking about making things automatic because they take less energy. And if you just do them enough, then they just become something make you feel so good you can't live without.
Right. And the story that you tell yourself is that you are a grateful, meditating writer who's also an athlete.
who treats my hands and my skin gently.
That's right.
And has beautiful,
That's right.
Smooth, calm skin. There I am.
Right.
I love it.
Great.
All right, Maria.
Kelly, I love you so much. Thanks for your vulnerability today. I really appreciate it.
And yours too. Love you.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This week's quote of the week comes to us from Charles Duhigg, the author of The Power Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. Change might not be fast and it isn't always easy, but with time and effort, almost any habit can be reshaped.
We are so grateful that you spent this time with us today, and we hope that you heard something that inspired, motivated, and educated you. Please see below for our copy of the show notes for any links or important information referenced here. Signing off for myself and champion co-host Kelly Pallas, we hope you'll join us again soon, and we know you can be a champion. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast, designed to make you feel inspired, motivated, and educated. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Also visit championsmojo.com to learn more.